My name's Alex. I'm 34, and up until last Christmas, I kept most things about my life pretty private, especially when it came to money. Not because I was struggling or ashamed or anything like that, but because I've learned that in families like mine, the less they know, the less they can use against you. I work as a freelance strategist, marketing, branding, and copywriting for startups and indie businesses mostly. It's the kind of job that makes people tilt their head and ask, "So, what do you actually do?" Especially people like my brother, Evan. He's 36, works in corporate finance, and if you ever forgot that detail, don't worry, he'll remind you. Loudly and repeatedly, usually in front of an audience. Growing up, Evan was the golden boy. Honor roll, varsity sports, internships hand-delivered by friends of our dad. I, on the other hand, was the creative one. That was never meant as a compliment. It was what my relatives said when I couldn't do math in my head as fast as Evan or when I decided to major in English instead of economics. At every holiday gathering, it was like walking into a courtroom where my life choices were constantly on trial. My aunt would always start with the same question. "So, still doing that freelance thing?" With the tone people usually reserve for discussing seasonal rashes. I got used to it. You'd think after a decade of rolling their eyes at my job title, it would lose its sting. But it doesn't. Last Christmas, though, something shifted. And it wasn't just the usual subtle digs. It turned into something else entirely. My wife, Megan, and I arrived at my parents' house around 4 p.m. on Christmas Day. We'd brought wine, gifts, dessert, the whole nine. Megan wore this deep green dress that made her look like a forest goddess, and I was actually excited to see my niece and nephew, who were now old enough to launch themselves at your legs and demand piggyback rides. My parents were in the kitchen finishing up dinner prep. My mom gave me one of her brisk, distracted hugs, already thinking about whether the ham was overcooked, and my dad barely looked up from his spreadsheet of wine pairings. I'm not kidding. He made a pairing sheet for Christmas dinner. Classic. Evan and his wife, Chelsea, were already there. Evan was on the couch with a whiskey in hand, holding court. His voice carried through the house like a foghorn. "So we just closed the quarter with a 7% surplus over target," he was saying as we walked in. "It's brutal out there, but we're outperforming like maniacs. 6 figures, man. And that's not even including the bonus." He said it with this laugh like he was both humble and superior at the same time. Then he looked over his shoulder and saw us. Speak of the devil. "Hey, little bro." I gave him a nod. "Hey, Evan. Merry Christmas. Still doing your, what do you call it, brand stuff?" he asked, with the same smirk he's had since high school, the one that makes you want to shove his face into a snowbank. "It's going well," I said, keeping my voice light. Megan shot me a warning glance, the one that said, "Don't rise to it." "Not today." Evan grinned. "That's cute. I don't know how you make it work without a salary, though. I'd have ulcers. I need stability. I like being able to plan my life, you know?" Before I could respond, Chelsea chimed in. "It's so nice that you get to work in your pajamas, though. That must be relaxing." I laughed, but it sounded more like an exhale. I wasn't surprised. They loved this routine. Every family event, it was the same script. Evan, alpha provider. Me, the quirky side character whose job was some strange hobby no one could fully understand. I could have shut it down right there. Told them about the contract I'd just signed with a European tech startup that was worth more than Evan's entire bonus. But that's not how I play things. I've always been quiet about money, not because I don't make any, but because I don't need to flash it. Unlike my brother, dinner was served around 6. My mom went full Pinterest, elegant place settings, cranberry centerpieces, the whole thing. The table was packed. Parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and the grand finale, Evan popping a bottle of champagne like he was ringing in the new year. He insisted on doing a toast before we ate. "I just want to say how grateful I am this year," Evan announced, lifting his glass. "For family, for health, and for job security. Not everyone can say they've got a 6-figure income in this economy." He looked right at me when he said it, subtle as a sledgehammer. There were a few awkward chuckles around the table. My aunt patted Evan's arm and said, "We're so proud of you, honey." Megan stiffened next to me, her hand tightening around her fork. I leaned over and whispered, "It's fine." But it didn't feel fine. After dinner, people moved into the living room for coffee and dessert. Megan went to the dining room table to grab her laptop. It had our niece's coloring app on it, and she needed to distract her while the adults talked. She opened the lid, and then, for some reason I'll never understand, got pulled into a conversation with my cousin about holiday plans and walked away without closing the screen. A few minutes later, Evan wandered past. He had a slice of pie in one hand and was humming something under his breath. Then he paused. I saw his brow furrow as he looked down at the laptop. His head tilted slightly. He blinked. He didn't say anything right away. Just stood there for a second, weirdly quiet. Then he muttered, "Wait, what is this?" I turned my head. Megan's laptop was open to a PDF file, our tax return summary. She'd downloaded it a week earlier to check a number and apparently never closed the window. I could see the screen from where I sat. Bold font at the top. Our name. Our earnings. Evan stared at it like he was trying to make sense of a magic trick. "Is this real?" he asked, his voice lower now. Megan froze, her cheeks going pale. I got up slowly and walked over, casually reaching for the lid. "Yup. Private document. Shouldn't be reading it." But he didn't let it go. "No. Hold on. This says you made." He trailed off, the number stuck in his throat. His eyes darted back and forth across the page like he was waiting for a punchline that never came. I shrugged. "I've had a good year." "Triple," he said, barely audible. I didn't respond. He looked at me like I'd just grown another head. Then, without saying another word, he turned, walked back to the couch, and sat down in total silence. He didn't speak to me the rest of the night, and he hasn't spoken to me since. But that's not even the real story. That was just the crack in the ice. The unraveling didn't start until later, when things began to shift, subtly, then dramatically. See, Evan's silence wasn't just about shock or embarrassment. It was something else, something sharper. And over the next few weeks, it turned into a slow, bitter campaign that nearly tore apart more than just our brotherhood. And that's where things really started to get interesting. After Christmas, things went quiet, unnaturally quiet. At first, I chalked it up to the usual post-holiday social fatigue. Everyone tends to retreat back into their own lives after the festivities, and I figured Evan was just licking his wounds in private, trying to wrap his head around the fact that the broke freelancer, little brother, wasn't actually broke at all. But as the days turned into weeks, the silence began to stretch. No group messages from him. No jokes in the family chat. No Instagram stories of his gym selfies or sushi dinners. Just radio static. Megan and I didn't bring it up at first. She'd caught the moment with the laptop, and we'd exchanged a knowing look afterward. But we had our own lives to return to, client meetings, new contracts, deadlines. The new year had kicked off fast for me, and I was juggling 3 international campaigns, which meant weird hours and lots of coffee. But there was a weight in the background, like a warning hum just beneath the surface. I couldn't quite name it, but I felt it. Evan had gone silent. Yes, but it didn't feel like peace. It felt like build-up. The first sign came from my mom. She called one morning while I was reviewing ad copy for a fashion brand in Milan. "Alex," she started, "I just wanted to ask, is everything okay between you and your brother?" I paused. "Why?" "Well, he's been saying some strange things. That you were flaunting your success? That you embarrassed him? That Megan did it on purpose with the laptop." I blinked. "Wait, what?" He said she left it open intentionally. I nearly laughed, but my throat felt tight. "You're kidding, right? It was a mistake. We didn't even know it was still open until he started reading it." "I know, honey. I believe you. But you know how he is when he feels shown up." "No, I didn't know how he was. I knew how he acted. He made everything into a competition. He already assumed he was winning. For years, I let it slide. But this was different. This wasn't him cracking jokes at dinner or gloating about his bonus. This was him rewriting the situation in his head so he could justify the bruised ego. Then my aunt texted me a week later. "Hey, just wanted to check in. Evan told us you're doing some shady online business stuff. You know we're here if you need help finding something more stable." That one made my blood run cold. Shady. Online. Business. The words weren't innocent. I replied politely, correcting her, explaining I was registered, tax-paying, with a client list any agency would kill for. But I could already tell the damage had started. Evan wasn't just upset. He was retaliating. The family chat, where we'd once shared dumb memes and recipe links, turned into a different animal. Evan would drop articles about freelancers scamming clients or how online influencers fake income. He wouldn't tag me, but he didn't need to. The implications hung in the air like fog. Chelsea chimed in once with a screenshot of someone getting audited and wrote, "This is why we love having real jobs." Just saying. And when I finally texted Evan directly to ask him what the hell was going on, he left me on read. Still, I tried to stay above it. Let him have his tantrum. I figured eventually he'd get bored or embarrassed and move on. He didn't. The real fracture came at our dad's 65th birthday in February. A big deal for the family. There was a dinner planned, some slideshow presentation Chelsea was obsessively curating, and everyone was expected to contribute something for the family tribute video. I sent in a short clip of Megan and me saying a few kind words, tossing in a few old photos I scanned of my dad and me fixing a bike together when I was 10. I kept it light and warm. The night of the dinner, we all gathered at this fancy restaurant downtown. Megan and I showed up on time. Evan and Chelsea were late, as usual, but when they finally strolled in, Evan acted like nothing had ever happened. He slapped me on the back, gave Megan a polite nod, and said, "Glad you guys could make it." It felt eerie, like watching a lion smile. We made small talk through appetizers, but Evan kept steering the conversation toward finances. First asking if I still had that freedom to work from bed, then asking if I'd looked into getting a real business license this year. Megan sipped her wine silently. I gave him nothing, just nods, shrugs. But inside, I was boiling. Then came the slideshow. Family photos, messages, goofy clips from old camcorder tapes. Everyone laughed, clapped, teared up. Then Evan took the mic. "I just want to say how proud we all are of Dad. 65 years of hard work. Setting an example for the rest of us. Of what it means to be a man. A provider. Someone who takes care of his family. Who never cuts corners or hides behind trendy jobs or online facades." There was a beat of silence. Chelsea clapped. My mom smiled nervously. My chest tightened. Later that night, as we were leaving, I caught Evan alone outside the restaurant while he lit a cigarette. He never smoked around family. Only when he was stressed. What was that about? I asked him. He exhaled, looking at the horizon. "You tell me." I waited. He didn't speak. "You're angry that I make more than you," I said. "That's it, isn't it?" "You're a joke, Alex," he said quietly. "You sit in your little home office writing tweets for startups and think that makes you a big shot. You think you can just skip the grind and win." I stared at him. "It's not a competition." "Of course it is," he snapped. "It always has been." That was when it hit me. It wasn't just about money. It was about identity. About the role he'd carved out for himself in the family. The successful one, the stable one, the favorite son. And I'd shattered it without meaning to, just by quietly doing well in my own lane. "You've been lying to everyone," he added. "Acting like you're barely scraping by, then showing off like you're a king." "I never showed off," I said. "You read something that wasn't meant for you. And now you're punishing me for your own insecurities." He scoffed. "We'll see how long it lasts. Internet fads come and go." And with that, he walked away. I didn't say anything to Megan on the drive home, but I knew that line would stay with me. 2 weeks later, my dad called me with a strange tone in his voice. "Evan's helping us redo the family trust paperwork," he said. "He's been suggesting we consolidate everything under one financial advisor. Streamline it." My stomach dropped. "And you trust him with that?" "Well, he is in finance." "Dad," I said slowly, "just be careful. You know what I do, right?" He paused. "You write ads." "No," I said flatly. "I manage digital strategy for tech companies. I handle legal compliance, privacy regulations, brand risk, and scalable revenue architecture. I know how to read contracts. If you're going to change anything legal, I'd like to see it first." Another pause. "I'll think about it," he said. But by then, I knew something had shifted. Evan wasn't just trying to win the sibling rivalry anymore. He was trying to rewrite the narrative. The golden boy had taken a blow to his pride, and instead of healing, he decided to burn everything that threatened his throne. Then, the betrayal came. It wasn't dramatic. It was a message. From my cousin Lucy. "Hey, just wanted to give you a heads up. Evan's been telling people you've been under investigation for tax fraud, that your income was exaggerated. Said it might affect the trust stuff." I stared at the message, rereading it 4, 5, 6 times. Megan walked in and saw my face. "What is it?" she asked. I handed her the phone. She read it. Slowly. Then looked up. "That's defamation." I nodded. "It's more than that." "Why would he say that?" "Just to hurt you." I felt something twist in my gut. "No," I said. "He wants me out of the family finances completely. He's trying to make me look like a liability. And just like that, everything I'd been brushing off suddenly crystallized into something darker. This wasn't just about pride. This was about power. But if Evan wanted a war, he'd picked the wrong opponent. I'd spent the last 10 years learning how to build narratives, manage public perception, and outthink people who underestimated me. I'd kept quiet out of respect. But now I was watching someone set fire to my name in slow motion. And I wasn't about to let that continue. Not without a plan. Not without consequences. I didn't react right away. After I read Lucy's message, I just sat there on the couch, motionless, while Megan paced the room, fuming. My thoughts weren't calm or coherent. It was more like static, a fuzzed-out radio signal filled with disbelief, rage, humiliation, and this slow, creeping sense of why does this hurt so much. I'd always known Evan could be arrogant, competitive, even cruel in that condescending way of his. But to go behind my back and accuse me of tax fraud? That wasn't just petty. That wasn't just a jab. That was calculated. He wasn't gossiping. He was poisoning my name. And the worst part? Some people were listening. Over the next couple weeks, I started noticing little shifts in how family members spoke to me. My uncle, who used to ask me about crypto and marketing trends at every gathering, suddenly stopped texting back. My dad sent a vague message about how there's no smoke without fire after I asked again about seeing the trust paperwork. Even my mom, who always tried to play peacemaker, had started answering my calls with an edge in her voice, as if she were bracing herself. "It's just hard to know what's real anymore, Alex," she said during one call. "Evan said you're under investigation and haven't told anyone. Why would he lie about that?" I nearly dropped the phone. "Because he is lying," I said. "I'm not under investigation." "That's insane. Did you even ask me before believing it?" She sighed. "You've always kept things to yourself. We never really know what's going on with you." That hit harder than I expected. Because yeah, I had kept my distance. I didn't do it out of malice, though. I just knew, deep down, that showing too much of my world would give people like Evan ammunition. I thought protecting my privacy was enough. I thought success could just be. It didn't have to be performed, paraded, or shoved in anyone's face. But I underestimated how uncomfortable quiet success makes insecure people, especially when it shifts the power dynamic they've built their identity on. And now I was watching everything crumble. Overnight, I went from the weird freelancer who somehow makes it work to this suspicious brother with fake money and legal problems. I could feel the shift in every comment, every lukewarm family reply, every silence that lasted just a little too long. Even Megan, as supportive as she was, started asking the hard questions. "Do you think your business is too dependent on staying invisible?" she asked one night over dinner. "Like, maybe it's time to stop hiding how well you're doing." I didn't answer. I just stared at my plate. That was the thing. I liked the shadows. I liked being underestimated. It gave me room to operate without noise, without ego. I never wanted to be the loudest guy in the room. I just wanted to build my thing and live a peaceful life. But apparently, in this family, if you're not loud, someone else speaks for you. And if they speak loud enough, you lose the right to define your own narrative. A week after that conversation, I hit what I think was my personal low point. I was on a Zoom call with a client, big one, a US-based e-commerce brand. We'd worked together for over a year. They were prepping to launch a new product line, and I'd handled all the pre-launch strategy. Things were running smooth, until they brought up a compliance check that had flagged something odd. "Just routine," they assured me. "But we heard some chatter from one of your old college connections. Said there might be some irregularities in your business filings." My stomach turned. "Who?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. They didn't say, but I knew. Evan had gone beyond family. He was sniffing around old classmates, LinkedIn connections, maybe even trying to nudge something into public view. I don't know what exactly he was saying, or who he was feeding it to, but it was spreading, little whispers designed to make people second-guess me. I ended the call and just sat there in my office, lights off, the laptop screen still glowing. I don't think I moved for an hour. That night, I finally admitted to Megan that I felt beat. "This isn't just annoying anymore," I said. "He's actually damaging my business. He's tainting my name." She didn't say anything right away. She just took my hand and squeezed it. "Then don't let him," she said. "Fix it, but do it your way." And for the first time in weeks, something inside me clicked. She was right. Evan was playing loud, messy, and public, but he was making a mistake. He thought silence meant weakness. He thought subtlety was passivity. He thought I didn't know how to fight. He forgot that I'd built a business on psychology, influence, and strategy, that I knew how to read people, how to control narrative, how to make moves without leaving fingerprints. He'd built his castle on family reputation and LinkedIn quotes. I'd built mine on quiet, precise execution. And maybe it was time I stopped treating this like a misunderstanding. This wasn't confusion. This was a campaign. So I started rebuilding, quietly. The first thing I did was get legal. Not emotionally legal. Not revenge fantasy legal. Real legal. I contacted my business attorney, sent over a packet of everything I had. Screenshots of Evan's posts, the group chat digs, Lucy's message about the tax fraud claims. Even the vaguely threatening comments he'd made outside Dad's birthday dinner. We filed a formal letter of cease and desist for defamation and business interference. I didn't serve it yet, just kept it in my back pocket. Then I began what I called my reputation audit. I scheduled private calls with every major client I had, just to check in. I asked how things were going, if there were concerns, if they'd heard anything about me. Most of them hadn't, but one or two had heard whispers. From where? Who knows? LinkedIn. Industry gossip. People are nosy. But every time I explained things calmly, professionally, and without slinging mud, they responded the same way. You're solid, Alex. We trust you. Still, I didn't stop there. I started posting a little more on social, case studies, behind-the-scenes work, client testimonials, with permission. Not bragging, just visibility. Letting people know what I do, how I do it, and why it works. I launched a minimalist website, a portfolio, a few strategy blog posts, a contact form. Nothing flashy, just presence. And I told Megan something that shocked even me. I'm going to start speaking publicly. She blinked. Like conferences? Podcast guest spots, I said. Interviews. Thought leadership panels. Not as a look at me thing. As a here's what I've actually built thing. It terrified me. I hated the spotlight. But if Evan wanted to paint me as shady, then I'd drown his lies with transparency. Then came the hardest part. My family. I sat down and wrote a 10-page document. Not an essay. A breakdown. Of my business. My earnings. My tax filings. My contracts. All verified. All clear. All legal. I attached the draft legal letter to Evan. I sent it to my parents with a simple message. This is what I've built. If you choose to believe rumors instead of asking me, I understand. But this is the truth. Not just because I said so, but because I can prove it. Love, Alex. Then I waited. The fallout was complicated. My dad didn't reply for 3 days. When he finally did, it was a short message. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I should have asked. My mom called and cried. She apologized. She said she felt manipulated and confused. That Evan had just sounded so certain. And Evan? Evan was silent. But I knew that wouldn't last. Because when someone builds their identity on being the best in the room, they don't take exposure well. They either double down or implode. And knowing my brother, he wasn't done yet. But neither was I. I wasn't just going to clear my name. I was going to take back everything he tried to steal. And the moment would come. I could feel it building, slowly, steadily, like pressure behind a dam. And when it broke, he'd learn what it really meant to be underestimated. I didn't have to wait long. 2 weeks after I sent that document to my parents, I got a text from my cousin Ryan, Evan's former best man, gym buddy, and lifelong sidekick. Ryan and I weren't close, but we shared enough blood and family functions to know each other's tells. And this text? It read like a man who'd just realized he'd been standing on the wrong side of a fault line. Hey, just wanted you to know Evan's been melting down in the group thread with some of the guys. Went off about you hacking the family and turning everyone against him. Honestly, he's been acting weird ever since Christmas. You good? I read it twice. That message confirmed what I'd suspected for weeks. Evan was spiraling. Not because of anything I did to him, but because his story was starting to crack, and he didn't know how to survive without being the protagonist in every room. Still, I didn't reply. Not yet. Because the truth was, I was still building. Still watching. Still collecting. By now, I'd moved out of defense mode. The silence was gone. The fog had lifted. I had clarity now, and with it, something I hadn't felt in months. Control. My next step was simple. I needed to know exactly how far Evan had gone. Because if I was going to expose him, if I was going to reclaim everything he'd tried to erase, I needed receipts. So I started looking. It began with my LinkedIn account. I hadn't touched it much since 2021, but I still had notifications on, and sure enough, buried in the archives were a few oddities. A message from a recruiter I didn't know asking why I'd pivoted into drop shipping. A comment on one of my old posts questioning the legitimacy of my self-employed title, both from users with no mutual connections. Both posted the same week Evan had ghosted the family. It didn't take a genius to figure it out. So I looped in a friend of mine, Noelle, who worked in digital risk management. She owed me a favor from a project I'd helped her land last year. I sent her a summary of the situation, minus the messy family drama. Can you run a light background trace? I asked. I want to know if someone's been creating fake traffic or accounts tied to me. Noelle came back 2 days later with a goldmine. For burner accounts, all created within the same 2-week span, all linked to the same IP subnet used by a private finance firm in the city. And one of them had visited my website 32 times over the course of a weekend. The same weekend my e-commerce client had mentioned those compliance concerns. She sent me a report, labeled and timestamped. One IP address kept popping up. I looked it up. It belonged to the building where Evan's firm was headquartered. I stared at the screen, pulse quiet. Cold. He'd created dummy accounts, posed as random users, dredged up doubt, quietly, deliberately, anonymously, trying to smear me under the radar. And now I had proof. I filed everything, saved it, copied it, uploaded it to 3 separate cloud drives. I wasn't going to rush anything. I wasn't going to throw it in his face. No, I was going to wait for the perfect moment. And that moment was closer than I thought. About a week later, my mom invited Megan and me to a family dinner. Not a holiday, not a birthday, just a casual get-together, as she called it. But her tone told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't casual. This was damage control. I said yes. Megan gave me a look. You sure? I nodded. It's time. Before the dinner, I called Lucy, my cousin who'd originally tipped me off, and asked if she'd be there. Yeah, she said. Evan's been acting extra weird lately. Like he's trying to act like nothing ever happened. But he keeps bringing up his new promotion. New promotion? I asked. Yeah, she said. Apparently he's trying to get a VP role at his firm. Final interviews are next month. Whole family's been buzzing about it. And just like that, the gears clicked. He wanted to look clean, untouchable, powerful. Of course he did. Reputation was everything in finance. And that's when the idea began to form. I wasn't going to burn him to the ground. I was going to undress him, piece by piece, at that dinner. And I wasn't going to do it with shouting or threats. I was going to do it with questions. The night of the dinner, Megan and I arrived 10 minutes early. My mom greeted us like she was trying to pretend nothing had ever happened, which, to be fair, was her specialty. My dad nodded. Polite, distant, still a little rattled. The house smelled like roasted chicken and wine sauce. There were already 8 people in the living room. Evan, Chelsea, Ryan, Lucy, and a few of our aunts and uncles. Evan was mid-story, as usual. So then I tell the junior associate, if you don't understand the amortization model, maybe this role isn't for you. And the room cracked up. Fake laughter rippled through the group. He saw me and paused, then smiled. Alex, he said, glad you could join us. Megan gave him a nod. I gave him one back. The rest of the evening played out like a slow chess game. I said little, smiled a lot, asked about people's jobs, commented on the food. Megan was warm but quiet, letting me lead. Then, after dinner, we all sat around the fire with coffee. That's when my dad, of course, asked the question that would light the fuse. So, Evan, tell us about this VP thing. Evan grinned like someone had just played his entrance music. Well, he said, it's been in the works for a while. I've been managing more accounts lately. The firm's looking to expand into advisory services, and I've been pushing that initiative for months. How does that work? I asked innocently. Evan glanced at me. What do you mean? The expansion, I said. Advisory services. What's the compliance structure for something like that? Especially when it overlaps with private wealth management. He blinked, then smirked. Why do you ask? Just curious, I said. You mentioned it a few months ago, I think. He paused. Everyone else stayed silent. Well, he said slowly, we have internal guidelines, obviously. Legal reviews, NDAs, that sort of thing. Right, I nodded. And how does your firm handle conflict of interest disclosures? Evan narrowed his eyes. What are you getting at? Just wondering, I said. Hypothetically, if an employee at a firm used company property to impersonate others online and interfere with someone's business, that would violate a lot of compliance policies, wouldn't it? The room went dead. Evan's face drained a shade. I could see Lucy's eyes flicker between us. "What are you talking about?" he asked, voice sharp. I leaned forward slightly, still calm. "I have IP logs, timestamps, and screenshots. 4 accounts, all created using a proxy subnet tied to your firm. One of them accessed my website over 30 times. 2 posted fake comments. 1 messaged a client. And all within the time frame you ghosted me after Christmas." Chelsea shifted awkwardly on the couch. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't accuse. I simply let the facts hang. "I haven't done anything like that," Evan said flatly. "That's absurd." "Okay," I said. "Good to hear. Because I have a letter drafted by my legal team. I haven't served it yet. But if any more rumors circulate, I'm prepared to escalate." Now the silence was no longer stunned. It was afraid. My dad sat back, looking at Evan with a new expression, one I'd never seen from him before. Doubt. And then, just like that, Evan laughed. But it wasn't his usual confident laugh. It was forced. Dry. "You're bluffing," he said. I smiled. "Am I?" I pulled out my phone, opened the email, showed it to my dad. 1 page. Headers. Footers. Signatures. He read it. Looked at Evan. Didn't say a word. That's when I stood up and said, "We should get going." Megan followed. Calm. Composed. And as we walked to the door, Evan didn't stop us. Didn't call out. Didn't say goodbye. Because he knew. He was no longer the one holding the narrative. He'd fired his shot. And now? It was my move. But the full revenge, that was still coming. And it wouldn't be loud. Or fast. Or showy. It would be patient. Surgical. I already had the setup. Now all I needed was the moment. And I knew exactly when it would come. It took 6 weeks. That was the timeline. Not 6 days. Not a single explosive confrontation. That's not how people like Evan collapse. People like him. People who build their worth on image, control, and status. They don't go down in one punch. They unravel. Thread by thread. Publicly. Quietly. Completely. And my job wasn't to throw fire. It was to pull threads. See, after that dinner, after I presented the facts without shouting, without emotion, without even raising my voice, Evan's silence said everything. He didn't call. He didn't text. He didn't try to deny it further, because he knew the moment he pushed back, I'd serve that legal letter. And in his world, finance, corporate advisory, investor relations, perception is everything. Even the whisper of an internal compliance probe can be fatal. And I was counting on that. Because I didn't want him just exposed. I wanted him isolated. I wanted him to watch everything he hoarded, the reputation, the reverence, the admiration, slip from his grasp while he stood there, powerless. So I set things in motion. The first move? Whispered accountability. I contacted a contact, Sarah, who worked in financial compliance at another firm. We weren't close, but we'd crossed paths at a few marketing panels, and I'd helped her company navigate a branding crisis once. I sent her a carefully worded email. Not accusatory, just informative. It said, "Hey Sarah, just wondering. Hypothetically, what's the protocol if someone at a finance firm is using company IPs to interfere with private businesses through impersonation or defamation? I have a friend in that boat. Curious how it usually plays out internally." Sarah responded 5 minutes later. "That's grounds for immediate investigation. IT logs, HR review, maybe legal. No joke. Especially if it touches client-facing roles." That's all I needed. Because I knew Evan was about to hit his final interview for the VP role. Knew he was likely going through internal vetting, maybe even background review. So I waited until 2 days before that interview, and I submitted an anonymous tip through his company's compliance portal. Again, no accusations. Just facts. I included a short summary of what I'd found, timestamps, site visits, impersonation attempts, and attached the IP trace logs Noel had uncovered. No name, no contact info, just documentation. And then, I walked away. No more pushing, no more checking in. I let gravity do the rest. And gravity didn't disappoint. It started with whispers. Lucy texted me 3 days later. "Something's going on with Evan. He canceled our brunch. Said he's dealing with a work crisis. Know anything?" I didn't reply. Then Ryan posted something cryptic on his story. A quote card that said, "Pride is the mask of insecurity." Subtle, petty, but telling. By week 2, Chelsea went dark on social media, deleted her Instagram, closed comments on Facebook. By week 3, Evan finally called. I didn't answer. He called again and again. On the 6th call, I picked up, not because I was curious, but because I wanted to hear it. His voice cracked as soon as I said hello. I don't know what you did, he started, but they're reviewing everything. My emails, my browsing history, my internal activity logs. They said someone submitted an anonymous complaint. Do you know anything about that? I didn't say anything. Alex, he said, voice strained. This isn't just some prank. They're taking it seriously. I'm on suspension pending review. I was this close to the VP seat. I let that hang, then finally said, you shouldn't have lied. You don't understand, he snapped. They're talking about terminating me. I've been there 9 years. You tried to wreck my name, I said, my voice calm. You spread lies to my clients. You whispered stories to the family. You made burner accounts. You tried to get me blacklisted in my own field. He didn't deny it. Instead, he said something that shocked me. I didn't think it would matter. You always acted like you were above everything. Like you didn't care what people thought. I blinked. And there it was. The root of it all. He couldn't stand that I wasn't competing. That I wasn't playing the same insecure game. That I was just living, quietly and fully, without asking for applause. You tried to punish me for being quiet, I said. And now you're mad that the noise finally caught up to you. He didn't respond. Eventually, he hung up. 2 days later, my mom called. She was crying. I just got off the phone with Evan, she said. He lost the promotion. They're offering him a transition severance to resign quietly. He said someone sabotaged him. I didn't reply. She paused, then added, did you? And for the first time in my life, I said something to my mother I never thought I'd say. I protected myself. That's all. She didn't argue. She just said, I understand, and hung up. After that, the family dynamic shifted like tectonic plates. Chelsea filed for separation 2 months later. My dad, still shaken, finally asked me to sit down and review the family trust with him. Not Evan. Just me. Quietly. Privately. Lucy and Ryan both texted to say they were sorry for believing Evan, for not asking questions, for going along with it. I didn't hold it against them. Evan had always known how to charm a room. But now, he couldn't even get a table. Last I heard, he moved to a smaller city, took a non-executive role at a second-tier firm. His name, once tossed around with admiration at family dinners, was now only mentioned in cautious tones. As for me, my business doubled. That European tech startup I mentioned, they asked me to join as a partner advisor. I gave a TEDx talk 6 months later. Megan and I bought a cabin in the mountains. And for the first time in my adult life, my family stopped calling me a freelancer. They just called me Alex. And Evan? He never called again. Not for my birthday. Not for holidays. Not even when our dad turned 66 and gave a speech that ended with, some people build success. Some people borrow it. Only one lasts. He looked right at me when he said it. So yeah, I didn't scream. I didn't plot revenge like a movie villain. I just stood still, while Evan walked himself into a corner he couldn't escape from. And in the end, the truth did the work for me. He tried to bury me with silence, so I taught him what silence really feels like.